Well, thank you so very much for that generous introduction. I kind of feel we should just stop there. Everything else will be a letdown. I am really delighted to be here, and I have to say I do hold a special affection in my heart for this region and for all of you. I also wish that in Washington our governance system could be quite as efficient and congenial as yours. It's really a model for the nation. But this is an impressive group, and this is a really significant region of the country that's absolutely vital to the advancement of biomedical product innovation. I remember back in July of 2011 coming to meet with this organization, and no doubt many of you in the room, with Senator Kerry at the time, now Secretary Kerry, but hopefully he will continue to work on some of the issues that we all care so much about. And as I recall, it was a very full and frank discussion, sometimes tough, but really very, very useful. And over the last few years, we at FDA have devoted a lot of time to listening to and learning from stakeholders, including industry. It's been extremely valuable, and we've tried to be responsive to what we've heard. And I want to talk with you this morning about some of the progress that has been made, and of course, what still needs to be done if we are to achieve our shared goals of bringing better, safer products to people who need them and, frankly, are counting on them. Certainly no region of our country, or in fact of the world, is doing more than this one to help leverage the opportunities in science and technology today in the service of people, their health, and their quality of life. This region and all of you are part of a most extraordinary life sciences enterprise with an R&D engine fueled by top-notch academic and industry research centers and centers of medical care. Here in Massachusetts, you have multiple world-renowned universities, and as I understand it, the top 5 NIH-funded research hospitals. So too, there are a remarkable 500 biotech and pharma companies. It seems hard to believe they could all fit in this relatively small state. And some 30 venture capital firms. And while job growth in the biotech industry faltered during the recession, it held its own here in Massachusetts. And today you employ tens of thousands of high-value employees, and you are doing amazingly productive work. This confluence of positive factors has contributed to the formation of what you have called a biotech supercluster that's second to none, and I think that I would be hard-pressed to disagree. And certainly there's been such a strong record of achievement, and there is such a robust and promising development pipeline. But even successful biotech clusters face daunting pressures: foreign competition, rising product development costs, the challenge of securing venture capital, the looming patent cliff, uncertainties surrounding tax policy and other economic issues, increasingly complex reimbursement policies, and of course a reduction in R&D budgets, both big pharma and government science agencies, importantly including the NIH and the FDA, who are significantly under the budget knife. And these external pressures are bearing down at a critical time for biomedical product innovation. This is a golden age for biomedical research and should be so for biomedical product innovation and development. Just a few obvious examples: the sequencing of the human genome has revealed new potential drug targets. Combinatorial chemistry, high-throughput screening, and biosynthesis have led to thousands of drug candidates. Cutting-edge electronics, nanotechnology, and material science have the power to transform medical devices. And yet, despite all of this, we are not as effectively translating those scientific discoveries into the therapies, preventions, or cures that people need. There's a long list of unmet medical needs: emerging infections and drug-resistant disease, the growing burden of chronic diseases, including, of course, obesity and diabetes, neurodegenerative conditions, and the mounting problems associated with an aging population, and the list goes on. There's nothing that I would like better than to find a single solution to these challenges. But there isn't one. Instead, we need a comprehensive, integrated strategy that engages the full ecosystem to advance biomedical product innovation. As a nation, we must take a serious look at everything from IP and patent policy to economic policy, including such things as access to capital, incentives and tax policy, how we invest in science, our reimbursement policies, and of course, regulatory policy and regulatory reform. All of these areas matter mightily to the robustness of the ecosystem, and they affect each other in powerful ways. But too often they operate in silos. We're missing opportunities for synergy, for coordination, and for leadership that we cannot afford to lose. The health of the biomedical product ecosystem is so essential to our national agenda, and the impact is one of cascading benefits for all. It matters for the health of individuals and communities. It matters to the health of our healthcare system, with opportunities to reduce preventable costs and offering new efficiencies through meaningful care. And it matters to the health of our economy, certainly the productivity of our nation's workforce, but also a robust pharma and biotech sector supports high-value jobs, positive trade, and global economic competitiveness. And all of this is particularly meaningful, of course, in our current fiscal climate. So I am committed to working with all of you and many others on the broad-based national strategy to advance biomedical product innovation that I believe is so very much needed at this time. And I think I can say that at FDA we are striving to do our part. Success will require regulatory flexibility, advancing regulatory science, and true collaboration among health professionals, industry, government, academia, patients, and our global health partners. As a result of our dialogues with industry, including MassBio, we have heard loud and clear that you want increased clarity, certainty, and predictability about FDA standards and expectations. Thanks in part to these conversations, we are well aware of the challenges that you face in bringing promising large and small molecule products to market, and we're trying to respond by achieving smarter regulation, greater flexibility, and creative approaches to drug development and evaluation. Our detractors would have you believe that FDA takes a one-size-fits-all approach to drug development. But I hope that you know from your own experiences and by looking at our recent track record of approvals that this is simply not the case. We're working hard to achieve an appropriate balance between benefits and risks by offering a range of development pathways depending on the product and the disease being treated. We recognize the need to find the most meaningful and effective ways to help speed the availability of promising new products for people, while never abandoning our mandate to assess safety, efficacy, quality, and benefit to patients. As evidence that we're moving in the right direction, consider the 47 novel drugs and biologics that were approved by FDA in 2012, the highest total in over a decade. FDA was able to review and approve many of these new therapies quickly by communicating with drug companies early in the development process, allowing flexible clinical trial designs, and using priority review and drug approval mechanisms to expedite the process. As a result, the majority of these important products were made available to patients in the United States earlier than elsewhere in the world. A number of these 47 novel drugs and biologics approved last year were developed here in the Massachusetts region by Massachusetts companies. And I want to briefly talk about a couple of these because I think they help to illustrate some of the important issues at hand. They include Iclusig, which treats 2 rare forms of leukemia, the orphan drug Juxtapid, a new drug Linzess for irritable bowel syndrome and constipation, and the cystic fibrosis drug Kalydeco. 3 of these 4 drugs were first-in-class molecular entities And each, I think, has a very important story to tell about how FDA is truly seeking to be a smart and flexible regulator. First, let's consider Iclusig, which treats 2 forms of leukemia, as I mentioned. Greater understanding of genetics and molecular pathways of cancer has led us from general cytotoxic agents to more targeted treatments, such as Iclusig, and this is a wonderful thing. The drug sponsor, Ariad Pharmaceuticals, benefited from several programs that FDA has in place to speed the development and review of promising drugs, including Fast Track designation, which provides a rolling or early review of portions of the application, Priority Review, which provides for a 6-month review schedule, and finally, Accelerated Approval, which bases approval on a surrogate endpoint or intermediate clinical endpoint. And this is an approach that can shorten approval times and allow more rapid patient access to promising new drugs while confirmatory studies are conducted in an ongoing way. And as a result of these many programs, Iclusig was approved in a mere 2.6 months. Many other novel drugs have been approved with 1 or more of these development programs. And in fact, when you look at the 39 novel drugs that were approved in 2012, 1 out of 3 had received Fast Track designation, 41% received Priority Review, and 10% were approved under the Accelerated Approval program. And since Iclusig treats 2 rare forms of leukemia, it was also designated an orphan drug, as was Juxtapid, another novel drug from a Massachusetts company, which helps treat a rare inherited condition, homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia. Today, there are treatment options for only a small percentage of the 7,000 rare diseases that collectively affect over 30 million Americans. But it's striking to recognize that 1 out of every 3 new FDA drug approvals in the past 5 years have been for rare diseases. And FDA routinely approves orphan drugs based on non-traditional drug development programs. A study that was published last year by the National Organization for Rare Disorders, NORD, found that 2/3 of the non-cancer orphan products approved between 1983 and June 30th of 2010 were based on single trials, studies using historical controls, and other such strategies. Juxtapid certainly fits that mold. It was approved based on a single clinical trial of 29 patients, and given the small number of patients studied for Juxtapid, we asked for 3 important post-marketing studies to collect additional safety data, including a long-term patient registry. I want to emphasize that patients are increasingly being brought in as an important partner and resource for drug development. I suspect that Ironwood Pharmaceuticals would agree with that. Its drug, Linzess, was approved last year based in part on data collection from patient-reported outcomes, which helped measure, from a patient's point of view, treatment benefit or risk in the clinical trials. Patient-reported outcomes are a type of data the FDA is increasingly looking at, along with the patient perspective more broadly. We believe that patients can offer a unique view both about their diseases and the potential gaps or limitations in available treatment or therapeutic area. But it's an area where we need to work closely together with the research community so that we can integrate these patient perspectives appropriately and in a validated way into our scientific research. But we are striving for the appropriate consideration of patient perspectives in drug review and soliciting input both on a range of issues associated with illnesses at different stages in drug development and on key issues at different key issues in terms of the different weighing of risks and benefits. And I also want to mention a meeting that I had earlier this week with patients and patient families where we talked about the needs of these individuals and what needs to be done to get innovative and life-saving medicines to them faster. And there was a discussion with the mothers of sons with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy that was just so poignant but honest and important, telling stories about how it feels when some of their children were enrolled in trials and some of them didn't qualify for inclusion. But what was striking to me was that all of them emphasized how willing they are to work with the FDA and to work with industry to ensure their sons can get the groundbreaking treatments currently under development, while also helping to bring new hope and meaningful answers through science and clinical research to the next generation of patients. Patients certainly played a proactive role in the development of another novel drug that I want to mention, Kalydeco, from the Massachusetts company Vertex. This exciting new drug targets one of the gene defects in cystic fibrosis, a serious disorder, as you well know, that affects the lung and other organs. About 4% of those with CF, or roughly 1,200 people, are believed to have the specific defect that's targeted by Kalydeco. We approved this drug in just 3.5 months, and it's having truly amazing benefits for patients. I think it's worth noting some of the factors that made this possible. For one thing, the development program for Kalydeco was based on sound, really truly elegant basic and clinical science. The process reflected an understanding of the genomics of cystic fibrosis and the underlying mechanisms of disease, the targeting of their compound to a specific type of mutation, and how to design a clinical plan to demonstrate safety and effectiveness. Vertex made good use of the opportunities for early interaction with FDA scientists. They formulated a plan ahead of time and carefully identified the issues they wanted to discuss. Such early interactions can be crucial for companies. In fact, we just completed a review of recent approvals, and it showed that early interactions between a drug developer and the FDA are positively correlated with early approval, and in many cases, years earlier. There are a lot of factors that no doubt influenced that, but it was a striking finding that jumped out at us. But with respect to Kalydeco, when Vertex was finally ready to submit an NDA, submission package was extremely well thought out, and FDA successfully was able to coordinate the various reviews of the many involved disciplines in an expedited way. And given the robust data that supported the clinical benefit of the drug, FDA did not feel it was necessary to do an advisory committee, and all of those things came together to really speed the review process. But what makes Kalydeco even more remarkable is that its development was made possible in part by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. It paid for some of the drug development costs. It provided researchers with useful insights about the CF patient population, and it assisted in the recruitment of study participants. The unique and mutually beneficial partnership that led to the approval of Kalydeco can serve as a model, I believe, for what companies and patient groups can achieve if they collaborate on drug development. I think that these 4 drugs, Iclusig, Juxtapid, Linzess, and Kalydeco, really demonstrate how drug development is evolving and the many ways in which FDA is striving to achieve smart, science-driven regulation, but more certainly can and must be done. Last year's FDA Safety and Innovation Act, FDASIA, created a new expedited approval pathway for breakthrough therapy, which was mentioned briefly in my introduction, and it was designed for when preliminary clinical data suggests that a new drug holds real promise to offer substantial improvements over available therapies to treat a serious condition. In addition to all of the features of fast-track designation, a sponsor that receives a breakthrough designation for their drug will generally receive more intensive guidance on an efficient drug development program, beginning as early as phase 1, as well as the involvement of senior FDA management. To date, FDA has received a total of 31 breakthrough therapy designation requests, of which 9 have been granted, 10 have been denied, 11 are pending, and 1 was withdrawn. For those companies that are interested in knowing more about these various expedited development and review programs, we're currently developing a guidance document that will describe each program and explain the criteria for each program, including what we mean by such concepts as available therapy, unmet medical need, and serious condition. But companies with promising drugs need to know something else as well, and it seems sort of obvious, but I think it's worth underscoring here. No matter how good your data and how important the unmet need, approval also hinges on whether you have a manufacturing facility ready to go and a plan in place for scaling up production so that you can manufacture your new drug and do so in a reliable, high-quality fashion that meets standards. Sadly, too many startup companies fail to recognize this fundamental fact, and so approval is delayed on that basis, and that really doesn't need to happen. I know that later today you're scheduled to discuss another of our approval programs, our new abbreviated approval pathway for products that are biosimilar to or interchangeable with licensed biologicals. Congress provided FDA with new authority in this area when it passed the 2010 Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, the so-called Obamacare, and we've been working since then to put a robust program in place. As you might expect, building a new approval program of this complexity takes much time and deliberation, and it has certainly been the case. Last year, to help developers interested in creating biosimilar products, FDA held 2 public meetings and also issued 3 draft guidances to industry that set out the agency's current thinking on key scientific and regulatory factors involved in submitting applications for biosimilar products to the agency. And we're moving forward to finalize those guidances now. And last month, FDA also issued a draft guidance on an issue that's common to all biological products: how to study whether patients are at risk of having an unintended immune response to a biological product, and if they do, how to evaluate the impact of that response. In fact, FDA has yet to actually receive a full-blown application for a biosimilar or interchangeable product, but we know that there is much industry interest in them and a lot of activity going on. As of yesterday, FDA's Drug Center had received 51 requests for meetings on 12 different biological products. It's held about 38 initial meetings with potential sponsors and has received 15 INDs for biosimilar development programs. Looking ahead, I want to mention one other area. FDA is also exploring with colleagues and policymakers whether a new approval mechanism might be of value for what we're calling special limited use. In the context of antibacterial drugs, for example, one can easily imagine the situation where it might be appropriate to approve a new drug for use in a population of patients with a serious drug-resistant infection, but limits its use in the broader population who have less severe disease and whose infections are not resistant to other antibacterial agents. Under current requirements, FDA cannot be assured that the use of that product would be limited. So drug development plans must often evaluate the risks in a broader population, resulting in larger and lengthier trials. Such an approach, which would require working with Congress for the creation of a new drug approval pathway, could permit a more appropriate risk-benefit evaluation for conditions such as severe drug-resistant infections, or for a chronic condition such as obesity, where there's a significant range of patients and associated risks. So we're exploring this new pathway, and we think that it would enable potentially life-saving medicines to be made available to patients in a more timely way. But it is a discussion that we are having, and we hope that all of you will help us to engage in our thinking and shaping of possible approaches. I noted at the outset that to fully translate today's sophisticated scientific discoveries and opportunities, we require advancements in regulatory science, the knowledge and the tools needed to assess and evaluate a product's safety, efficacy, quality, and performance. It involves the development of new methods, standards, and models that we can use to speed the development, review, approval, and ongoing oversight of medical products. To my way of thinking, it's an essential component of the scientific enterprise, yet it's been underappreciated, underdeveloped, and certainly underfunded for many years. It's the critical link between cutting-edge discoveries and real-world diagnostics, treatments, and cures. And at this time of enormous scientific opportunity, but also increasing economic constraints, investment in regulatory science will fulfill many needs. Regulatory science can help us recognize the potential of promising therapies that otherwise might be discarded in the early stages of development, and save critical time and dollars by making sure that we have the tools we need to detect at an early stage unsafe or ineffective therapies. Regulatory science can help to develop and optimize innovative clinical trial designs and new analytics that can give us robust scientific answers, but require smaller patient populations, shorter time frames, and hopefully lower costs. It can enable us to use our knowledge of biological pathways and gene variants to help identify promising new drug candidates and new potential targets for treatment, and can help us to usher in the era of personalized or precision medicine by linking advances in genetic understanding and new data, as well as biomarkers with targeted therapies. Regulatory science can also bring information technology and scientific computing to bear on drug development, as well as providing such vital information as a product's safety and benefit profile after it enters the marketplace through post-market surveillance strategies. Advancing regulatory science at FDA has meant strengthening our science base, including mission-critical research, encouraging the scientific and professional development of FDA staff, and perhaps most important, scientific collaboration. We collaborate with outside experts in a range of formal and informal ways. A number of research consortia have really proven to be tremendously valuable, and I think speak to the value of such efforts going forward, such programs as our Biomarkers Consortium and the Alzheimer's Neuroimaging Consortium. We've also established 3 centers of excellence in regulatory science at academic institutions, and we hope, money willing, that we might be able to do more. One involves a set of research universities in Arkansas, working closely with our National Center for Toxicologic Research. One is at Georgetown University, and one is at the University of Maryland. And these centers are conducting targeted research, strengthening education and training in regulatory science, and bolstering scientific exchanges and collaborations. Maryland, for example, is forming a public-private partnership that includes industry to highlight awareness of regulatory science and provide insight and direction on research projects. We're also working with the Reagan-Udall Foundation, which is a relatively new private and independent nonprofit research organization created to really support the mission and goals of the FDA, and they are enabling us to work with them around a number of exciting regulatory science projects, and we expect those activities to expand over time. And one other project I want to mention, late last year we joined with the industry group Life Sciences Alley, academia and nonprofit organizations to found the Medical Device Innovation Consortium, which is really the first of its kind in the device space, and it will create a safe space for collaboration on pre-competitive early-stage technology efforts that will eventually benefit the entire device industry. So I think that my time is coming to a close, but I did want to take this opportunity to talk about our progress in ensuring regulatory flexibility, advancing regulatory science, and encouraging public-private partnership. But assuredly, more still needs to be done to confront the multiple challenges of advancing biomedical product innovation. And for FDA, these demands come at a time of budgetary restraint, not the least of which is the sequestration of funds that has cut our budget, and of course the continuing resolution, continuing budget resolution that we're operating under has also limited our expansion, and sadly both of these programs have limited our ability to use the recently appropriated user fees from industry around key areas of shared importance and collaboration. But challenges have been FDA's constant companions since we first began back in 1906 when President Teddy Roosevelt signed our agency into law. And we were created with a mission to promote and protect the health of the public, and that remains our driving purpose. But how we address the challenges before us, how we further our work, I think was probably best stated by President Abraham Lincoln, who's much in the news and even in Hollywood these days. But he actually played a very important role in the origins of FDA as well. He created the original Office of Chemistry that decades later evolved into the FDA, and in a very different context, but I think the words are very applicable. He said, "We must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so must we think anew and act anew." Truly, this is good advice for all of us here as we confront new challenges, but also new opportunities. As we engineer new and better ways of doing things, as we strive to develop innovative new tools and approaches, and most importantly, as we work together to develop the new treatments, prevention strategies, and cures that so many people need and so many people are counting on. This is a mission and a responsibility that we share. So I thank you for your time, for your work, and look forward to continuing to work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Do we have time for
2 questions?
Okay, sure.
We do have time for 2 questions, and we collected questions, and here are the 2. To give you some context, we had a session yesterday on neurodisease, and in Wednesday's New England Journal of Medicine published the FDA's proposal to streamline the FDA's approval process for Alzheimer's. Is there any chance you could elaborate on this exciting development?
Well, I have to confess I haven't read the actual article in the New England Journal. They're sort of stacking up on my bedside table to read, but I am familiar with the... well, I think this reflects our efforts to really think in some new ways about what are the realities of the diseases that we're facing, the critical unmet public health and medical care need, and the urgency to really move new scientific opportunities through the pipeline. And for a disease like Alzheimer's, I mean, first of all, the challenges of even being able to put people into your testing protocols in terms of who truly has the disease, you know, what potential variant, et cetera, and that's where our neuroimaging consortium has actually been helpful. But also the need to identify what are some of the right early measures so that we're not only thinking about looking at treatments at end stage, but also being able to begin to assess the disease early on, be able to really look at products that could really transform progression, which is the most important thing overall, but very, very challenging scientifically. So we are trying to identify what are appropriate intermediate measures, what are things that we can identify and validate and use in clinical studies, but not have to wait for the full progression of the disease, the ability to look at the brain at autopsy, and the sort of more traditional way of thinking about a drug development and testing process. So it's part of a broader set of activities to try to think in new ways and be more flexible, and to really understand indicators of disease that at an earlier time we might not have thought could be identified and validated in ways that were robust enough to underlie the development and approval process.
Great, thank you. As you can imagine, and you touched upon sequestration in your remarks, and we received a lot of questions about that. That's very, very concerning for many folks in the Commonwealth where we do rely on the FDA and NIH, et cetera. Is there any chance that you could elaborate a little bit more on the long-term impact that this could have on the FDA?
Well, a couple of things. One is that obviously, sequestration or not, we are in a period of constricting budgets, and we need to think very carefully in that context and prioritize, as well as, I think, engage in greater collaboration so we can leverage resources in important ways. Sequestration has added an unexpected burden to us at a critical time. And on top of that, the unexpected determination that the user fees, as I mentioned, would be part of the budget cutting process. The user fee dollars are appropriated through a mechanism that in the context of sequestration and our budget process, they look like budget authority dollars, so to speak. So the fact that sequestration had to go into place, it is affecting user fees. We are hoping that as part of a process that I frankly had never heard about, I didn't learn about it in my government courses, we're hoping through a process that involves Congress passing an anomaly that we will be able to address some of our concerns, both about the continuing resolution for the budget, because we're stranded in fiscal year 2012 at the present time, even though many of the plus-ups that we were expecting, especially with regard to user fees, would kick in fiscal year 2013. So we are hoping that there will be an anomaly that will be passed that will enable us to get access to those user fee dollars and may address some of the concerns of sequestration as well. So guardedly optimistic about that and appreciate the opportunity to work with Congress to address this important concern. As to the longer term, I have several worries. One is that obviously without additional resources, we won't be able to fully hire up and put in place some of the critical programs and programs that were so carefully negotiated with industry and with other stakeholders to address critical and urgent priorities within the biomedical product space. I also, frankly, am a little bit worried about how all of this will affect industry's willingness to come to the table as a full partner 5 years from now when we renegotiate the user fee levels and programs. So I think that we need to work together to fix this problem, short-term and long-term. We need to do it because of the importance of the work that we do and the fact that we simply cannot put on hold the progress that's being made and the opportunities that are before us in science today, and the critical burden of continuing unmet public health and medical care needs. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. How about a big round of applause for the Commissioner?